Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Middleware Technologies. Today we'll be looking at how we can install and configure Vagrant with libvirt KVM Virtualization provider. Okay, so here in this article we will try to see how we can install Vagrant and install the relevant software for virtualization platform, and we will try to configure Vagrant using libvirt as a virtualization provider to launch the guest virtual machines. Okay, because by default Vagrant, whenever it is installed, it comes with VirtualBox virtualization provider as the default provider. So we will need to configure our Vagrant in such a way that it uses libvirt as the virtualization provider and uses it to launch the KVM virtual machines. Okay, so let us see how we can configure this in this video. Okay, so I am currently working on Fedora 37 workstation. Okay, so let us try to understand what is Vagrant before we try to install and use it. Okay, so here are some of the important points that I have jotted down in order to understand better what Vagrant exactly is and how we can utilize it. Okay, so as you can see, the first point, it is basically used to set up a virtualized development environment. Okay, so let me go into Vagrant home page. So you can just search for Vagrant and it will take you directly to the home page of the Vagrant software. Okay, so as you can see, it is basically for development environments. So it is used to create your virtualized development environment using a declarative configuration file, and you can use it to simplify the launch, basically creating your virtual machine and destroying it whenever you require. Okay, so that is the whole purpose Vagrant is used for. Okay, so the second point, as I mentioned, it uses a declarative configuration file. So we write our declarative configuration in the Vagrant file. Okay, so we will look at it in our next steps. Okay, and the third point is it comes with command line utilities for managing the life cycle of virtual machines. Okay, so when you install Vagrant, it comes with a set of tools which you can utilize in order to manage your virtual environment using the Vagrant tools. So that also we will take a look at it, some of the Vagrant tools that we will be utilizing in this demo. Okay, in the next step, as you can see, the Vagrant cloud providers provides us with public searchable index of virtual boxes with different technologies. So what it means is, so let me go into my browser and try to search for Vagrant boxes. Okay, so this is going to take you to the Vagrant up.com boxes, wherein you will look at you will have a list of all the virtual boxes that are available for you to use. Okay, so these are some of the virtual boxes that you can use, and you can see each of the virtual box is provided by a different provider. So let's say this box is provided by Ubuntu is provided by VirtualBox. So there are multiple versions of this, but if you go for other things, we have VirtualBox for VMware also, VMware provider also. Okay, so if you see these, this VirtualBox is basically provided using three providers, that is VirtualBox, libvirt, and parallel hosted. Okay, so we are going to use the libvirt provider VirtualBox. Okay, from this list of VirtualBox that are provided over here. Okay, so we'll see how we can use it in our next step. And coming to our next point, VirtualBoxes can be created using Packer, Cloud Web Interfaces, or API. So this is software that we can use to actually create the virtual boxes. Virtual boxes can be versioned to track the life cycle and make updates and fixes efficiently. Okay, so as I said, like virtual box is a declarative configuration. Virtual Vagrant boxes can be created using the Vagrant file, and these Vagrant files can be version controlled to maintain the version of the boxes that you're creating. Okay, so it's basically like maintaining the life cycle of your Vagrant boxes. Okay, Vagrant stores the user data in the home directory and in the .vagrant .d directory. Okay, so this is a directory that gets created by default when you start using the Vagrant, and it stores the user data configuration. Okay, so that we will try to look at it. So let me go into my shell and try to do ls minus ldr home directory. In that we are going to look for vagrant.d. Okay, so as you can see, this is the home directory wherein all the boxes are like downloaded or installed, and this is the data directory that holds our machine that we are going to we are launching. And yeah, so this is basically the home directory wherein all the data related to the Vagrant is stored whenever you start using Vagrant as a tool for launching and managing your virtual machines. Okay. And now let us look at the other point. The Vagrant isolates dependencies and their configuration with a single disposable and consistent development environment. Okay, so Vagrant, like it is used to launch an isolated virtual machine, which keeps the dependencies and configuration separate from the host machine. So it is easy to use, and it keeps you isolated from the host machine. So it helps in testing your software and configuration in an isolated environment from the host machine. Okay, the primary function of Vagrant file is to describe the type of machine required for project and how to configure and provision these machines. Okay, so as I said, like Vagrant is used to launch the virtual machines. So in order to launch virtual machine, we need to provide or define a set of parameters for the virtual machines, like what is the name of the virtual machine, what is the provider of the virtual machine, what the number of cores that we want to use for this virtual machine, that is CPU, and what RAM we want to utilize for this virtual machine, and how we want to install or provision our software. All those things can be defined using the Vagrant file. So that is the whole purpose of Vagrant file. Okay, and next, coming to the Vagrant actually looks at a series of Vagrant files, merging the settings as it goes. So this is a bit complicated one, which you may not need when you are just starting to utilize Vagrant files. But to brief you, so by default, Vagrant boxes come with a different Vagrant file. Like Vagrant base images come with a different Vagrant file, but in order to override those settings, you can define your own Vagrant file and override the settings which are provided by the base image. So that is what basically this statement means. So you can create multiple Vagrant files, and each Vagrant file can override the Vagrant file at the level above it. Okay, so it is something that we may not use it, but that is something that is provided by Vagrant tool. Okay. In the next statement, within each Vagrant file, you may specify multiple Vagrant.configure blocks. Okay, so configuration, as I said, like we need to configure our Vagrant virtual machine using a set of configuration parameters. like how much CPU, how much memory that we want to use, what is the host name, what is the uh, IP address that we want to use. So all these configurations can be defined using the vagrant.configure block that we will look at it in our how to demo. Okay. Boxes required a provider virtualization product to operate before you can use boxes. Box ensure that you have a properly installed supported provider. So as I said, like Vagrant as a tool we can use only when we have a compliant virtualization software or provider installed on already on our machine. So VMware, VirtualBox, and KVM are a list of softwares that provide virtualization technologies. Okay, so in order to use Vagrant, you will need to have one of them as the virtualization provider software installed on your machine and working. Okay, so here we are going to use libvirt KVM as a virtualization provider. Base boxes are extremely useful for having a clean slate starting point from which the to build a future development environments. Okay, so Vagrant boxes already provide you with a base box which you can use, and on top of that you can try to install and configure software, and then you can package that as a whole virtual box. Okay, Vagrant box, and you can use it to launch your Vagrant development. You can use it to launch your development environment which you have configured previously. Okay, so these are some important points about Vagrant. And in short, like we can say that Vagrant is basically a wrapper around the virtualization machine, virtual machines providers like VirtualBox, VMware, or libvirt. Okay, so these are the softwares that we use to create virtual machines, but Vagrant is one level above. Basically, it is a wrapper around these virtual machine providers, which are actually used to build, provision, and uh, launch the virtual machines. Okay, so now let us see like how we can use Vagrant in our step-by-step procedure outlined below. Okay, so as a first step, like we need to check if our CPU supports the virtualization platform. Okay, so in order to use Vagrant, or in order to use a virtualization provider, and the first and foremost thing that we need to check is whether our hardware or the CPU supports that supports the virtualization uh, technology. Okay, so for that, like we need to do the following command. So if you get an output, so it basically means like it supports virtual machine technology. Okay, so by default, Linux comes with a module, that is kernel module, which helps in basically setting up our virtualized environment. Okay, so but in order for the kernel module to be effective, we need to have our CPU that supports that virtualization technology. Okay, so if the CPU itself does not support the virtualization technology, the kernel module that we have by default installed with the Linux is of no use. Okay, so in that case, like if we do not have our CPU that supports virtualization technology, the virtualization software will fall back to QEMU /KVM. Okay, so what does it mean is QEMU. Okay, so this is an emulator unit. Basically, it provides a virtualized platform emulator at user space level, so basically at the software level, and it communicates with the kernel, but that is going to be very slow, like in case your hardware does not support um, the kernel, the virtualization technologies. Okay, uh, so that is the thing about the QVM U slash KVM. Okay, now let us go into our next step. So here in the step, like we are going to install the tools and the software that is required for the KVM virtualization. Okay, so that can be done using DNF install at virtualization. So this is basically the group of packages, the RPM packages, you can say, that gets installed in order to set up your machine for a virtualized environment. Okay, so if you go and look at sudo dnf group info virtualization, okay, so you can see like it by default installs the following packages, that is virt install, libvirt, mukvm, virt manager, and virt viewer. Okay, and these are optional packages that we can install if required. Okay, but this is basically when we install this group, it basically installs the following default and mandatory packages which are required for managing the virtualized environment. Okay, so we can install it using the following, or we can install it manually using this step, that is install Vagrant. Okay, so here what I'm doing is I'm installing a couple of additional softwares like libvirt devil and the Vagrant libvirt, Vagrant SSHFS, and Vagrant host manager. Okay, so these are some additional softwares that I am installing along with Ansible, that is we are going to use to configure or provision our machine. Okay, uh, okay, so this is basically the thing that we need to do in order to set up your Linux machine or the host machine with the required virtualization software. Okay, now let us go into our next step, that is installing Vagrant plugins. Okay, so here like I am actually installing some plugins like Vagrant libvirt, okay, Vagrant libvirt, and Vagrant host manager. Okay, so what happens is basically like this Vagrant libvirt and Vagrant host manager RVM packages should be sufficient, but in case like you missed out to install the libvirt devil technologies devil package, which is actually the package that is required in order to compile and install the Vagrant libvirt and Vagrant host manager packages. So in that case, like you will get some error like libvirt devil packages, the required package is not installed. So so you need to install that one, and once that is installed, like you can just install the plugins like Vagrant libvirt and Vagrant host manager. Okay, so in case like you do not have libvirt devil package and you try to install some plugins, you might get that error. But to be safe side, like we are installing the packages on the RPM level, and we are also installing it using the plugin. Okay, now let us go into our next step. So we are so in this step, like we are going to enable and start the libvirt and virtual network D services. Okay, so so that if you can check, okay, so libvirt service is loaded. and virtual network is loaded. Okay, now you can start them. The virtual network D service is basically it is used to configure your virtual network for the libvirt environment. Okay, so now if you see, the status is running for both libvirt and virtual network D services. Okay, now let us go into our next step, that is step 6, that is generating the Vagrant file. Okay, so here if you go into so let me go into some temp location, and if you run Vagrant init, it is going to create a Vagrant file for you. So this is the default Vagrant file that you get, wherein you can configure the VM box, you can configure the network, and you can configure the folders that you want to sync. And this is the default configuration, declarative configuration file that you get, which you can modify as per your requirement. So this is the provisioning that we can use in order to like install and configure our software. Okay, so in my case, like I'm using that command to generate the Vagrant file, and then I'm modifying the Vagrant file in such a way that I'm going to install the Fedora 38 box and configure virtual port forwarding, basically like whatever is getting installed in the guest VM on port 80, I'm exposing it to the host machine on port 8080. Okay, so that is what this statement does. Okay, and in the last, like I'm going to use the provider libvirt provider. Okay, so as you can see, we are using the libvirt provider in order to configure our VM and provide the virtual memory and CPU configuration. Okay, so once that is done, like we can configure our VM or provision our VM. Yeah, so here I'm using the shell as an inline to configure our VM. So here you can see, like I'm installing DNF, installing updating DNF and installing HTTPD packages and starting up the HTTP service. Okay, so let me show you. So this is my Vagrant file. So as you can see, like I have configured the VM box, the VM network, and the provider, that is libvirt, with virtual memory, 1 GB of memory, and virtual CPU 2 core. Okay, and we are going to use the provisioner, that is shell provisioner, in order to install HTTPD package and start up the service. Okay, so let me launch this. So now we are going to use the Vagrant tools, that is Vagrant up, in order to launch our VM based on the Vagrant file that we have defined. Okay, now you can see like our HTTPD package installation has been completed. So if you go and look at it, the complete stack trace, of this Vagrant up command, like it is checking if the box is present locally, otherwise it is going to download that box. Okay, and it is going to configure our VM as per the configuration. Like we have set CPU to 2 memory as 2 core and memory to 1024. Okay, and this is our Vagrant file definition. And it is going to use the following disk. So you can see the image, like it is going to create this img file, and it is going to use this 41 gig disk as a storage disk for this virtual machine. Okay, and the most important thing is it is launched using libvirt as a provider. As you can see, bringing up this machine up with the libvirt provider. But in order to make this happen, like the thing that we need to configure is in our home directory. Like if you open the bash rc file, like you can configure this environment variable, that is export vagrant underscore default underscore provider is equal to libvirt, so that it will start using the libvirt as the default provider for launching the virtual machine. But in case like you haven't configured that, like you need to you need to provide the provider like with the following option manually, like in case you are not able to configure that in the bash rc, like in your home directory. Okay, so that is one thing that I wanted to mention over here. So now like you can see that our Vagrant machine is up. Okay, so you can just check it using the Vagrant word. Okay, so you can check it using the virt manager. Okay, so you can see when we ran this command, the virt manager, like it has opened this virtual machine manager GUI, wherein you can see like our HTTP Vagrant server is up and running. Okay, this one like you can also use Vagrant to halt your machine. So you can so let's say like you have halted your machine using the Vagrant halt, and now if you see like it is stopped, like it is basically shut down. Okay, now you can do Vagrant up again so that it will come up again. Let us give it some time. Okay, now it is up and again running. Okay, so you can see like it is configured to forward the request from the port 80 on the guest machine to port 8080 on the host machine. So let us try to see like what page we get when we go on to the port 8080 on host machine. Okay, so for that just go to 8080 on localhost. So you can see the Fedora web server test page is launched. So this is the default page that you get whenever we install HTTPD package or Nginx package on the Fedora workstation or Fedora server. Okay, so this is how like you can use the virtual the Vagrant tool in order to launch your virtual machine using the libvirt provider. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Thank you all. Thanks for watching this video, and you guys have a great day.